Okay, it is 3 o'clock on the dot, so I'm going to get started. This is March 19th, 2020. It's your weekly Q&A, and you can see I'm in full work from home casual mode because, of course, anybody watching this after the fact will recognize the date and know that March 19th was right in the midst of the beginnings. Hopefully not, too much longer, but I'm sure it is. We have much worse to come at the beginning of our addressing coronavirus here in the United States. So I hope all of you are doing well. Like I said, this has kind of been the first few days now of being home fully. Everything I do normally is closed, except a lot of what I do normally is online. So I'm still working, of course, but staying close to home and taking care of my family, as I'm sure you are as well. So I hope all of you are well, and that you and your family as well. Everybody is safe. Everybody is heeding the warnings, taking this seriously, and at the same time not panicking. I'll talk a little bit more about kind of my approach to that in a second. But first of all, a quick disclaimer. I'm Jamie Hartman. As you probably know, I am a functional nutritional therapy practitioner. I do not diagnose or treat any disease. The information that's presented here is for your general information only. It's not medical advice, and you should always consult with your medical provider before making any changes to your diet, your supplement routine, your medications, of course, or even exercise programs. So let's jump to our first question, and that it comes from Andrea. And she asks, if you can see that, I apologize, my face is over, at least in my view. How important is organic for our fruits, veggies, and meats for AIP? Organic, it can be really expensive. And you're absolutely right. It can be really expensive. It's usually is more expensive than the conventional options. And there's a reason for that, though, because in general, it costs more to produce those foods that way. However, sometimes we're just paying more because it's the way it's marketed. And so I do think it's important to recognize that you don't always even need a quote organic seal on your fruits, vegetables, and meats in order to get something that actually is organic. So that's important to know. Like, if you can get fruits, veggies, and meats from a local farmer or a gardener, grow them yourself, and you know what has been put or not been put on them, you're probably even doing better than the official organic, and you can save quite a bit of money. So I do think it's important to be trying to always eat the highest quality fruits, vegetables, and meats that you can get. That doesn't always mean that you're going to choose the organic option, either because it's budget prohibitive or because you actually know you have a source that's as good as an officially designated organic. So I don't know if people know this, but that organic label is regulated, which is good. So we know when we're getting something that's USDA here in the United States certified organic, that it's been grown or raised under certain characteristics, qualifications that allow them to put that label on. So we know we can trust that it hasn't been sprayed with certain pesticides, that it isn't using genetically modified processes, that it has those requirements of that program built in. But you could also easily plant your own vegetables or get them from a friend who's growing them in their garden, and they're going to be actually even more high quality. So when people ask me that, do I have to buy organic? I turn the question back around and say, you should always be considering all your options and get the best you can. So if you were just going though into a regular grocery store, just a standard grocery store, the best option in most cases is going to be, in that case, it will be the organic option. That would be your best choice. If you can't afford that though, then I always recommend people take a look at what's known as the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, the environmental working group. And I'll put that link in the notes for this when I post it on YouTube. The environmental working group updates this every year. They do tests, they figure out which vegetables and fruits have the highest levels of pesticide residue, and then they make recommendations for which ones we can prioritize. So we can prioritize avoiding the dirty dozen, the ones that have the highest residue. And then when we can't afford to always get organic, if it's on their Clean 15 list, which is usually those are the numbers they use, then we can feel pretty confident that it doesn't matter how it was raised. Whatever in the grocery store you have available is fine. So I recommend people take a look at that each year, take a look and see and prioritize there. When it comes to meat, that has a lot of the same similar issues. You know, the farmer that I get my meat from doesn't have an organic label. They're not able to, because getting certified to be organic is extremely difficult for them, but they are actually doing things even better than I think the organic requirements are, because it's grass-fed or it's pasture-raised. And I trust them because I can visit their farm and I can talk to them and I can see what they're doing. So that's really the best, honestly, when it comes to meat, is to get something that has been raised in a pasture, that's been raised and fed the appropriate diet for it. So for cattle, for beef and for lamb, that's grass-fed. For chickens, that's going to be that they've been pastured, they've been raised on pasture. So that means they get to go outside and they get to poke around for bugs and things like that. They will still have been fed some grain. So don't be looking for grass-fed chicken because they're not actually able to eat grass. They can eat outside and they can poke around, and grass can be part of what they eat, but they wouldn't be able to live on just grass, you know. So they're going to be eating bugs, they're going to be eating scraps and things like that. And then for pigs, it's similar. Pigs actually are omnivores like we are. So it's okay for them to eat some grain if it's healthy grain, if it's, you know, the kind that's not been released with pesticide itself. And that they get to go outside, they get to be exposed to the fresh air. So we look for pasture-raised pork as well. But bottom line here, it is still entirely possible to heal, to see incredible improvement on AIP, to find really good health, even if the best you can ever get is just your regular grocery store fresh produce. It is entirely possible. So I always let people really hear that multiple times, that, you know, you do the best you can and you will see results. I would far prefer somebody to do AIP eating just grocery store vegetables and fruit and meat, and instead of saying, well, screw it, I can't do it at all, I'm just living on McDonald's. You know, you're going to still see great improvement by doing it, even if it's regular grocery store produce. So a couple of resources I would suggest for anybody worrying about a budget in terms of figuring out, you know, what they're going to do on AIP. If you go to my friend Angie and Mickey's website, Autoimmune Wellness, they have a couple series on that. And then they have a podcast that they do. They do it in series. So I think they've had three seasons. They do it in seasons. And one of the seasons, I believe it was the most recent one, but I could be wrong on that, was all about budget and AIP. So Autoimmune Wellness, if you're a podcast listener, I strongly recommend checking that out. All right, Andrea, I hope that helped. And the second question, I believe, also came from Andrea. Yeah. And she asked, do I know of any support groups when being on AIP gets difficult? You know, it's hard. Honestly, I know of a lot of places you can get support. You know, one of the things that can be really helpful is just reaching out to a coach like me and seeing if maybe we want to do a session. I do just one standalone session. Sometimes you need a support group. Sometimes it's just talking with one person can be helpful. So, you know, that's one way, looking at coaches. I do know there are a lot of Facebook groups. I sometimes think that those Facebook groups and other social media groups maybe sometimes more stress inducing than they are helpful. Especially if you're finding AIP difficult, because you get so many voices, you get so many conflicting answers, and sometimes you don't feel supported because you ask, I've seen it happen, you ask a question and instead of getting a kind answer, you get, you know, somebody feeling like this question gets asked too much, and they snap at someone because they're having a bad day. So I think that if you're finding AIP really difficult, if those kinds of groups are making that feel worse, I would just eliminate them from your life. You know, you're not going to miss it if you didn't know it was there. But they might be helpful for you. So, you know, everybody's got their own personality there. You know, if you're talking about being on AIP and you've been doing it for a while and it's getting helpful, you know, I mentioned her before, but Angie Alt, one of my good friends, my mentor, she has a program that she calls the Living Well Collective. And it is a monthly, it's oriented around Facebook, but you have to pay to be in it. So it filters out, you know, it's a small fee, but you have to pay. So it filters out people who are just there to kind of be crabby. And it's really just people who are really focused on supporting in a positive way. And she's in there too, coaching, and sometimes she has me help out if she's, you know, kind of overwhelmed with whatever's going on. So that's specifically for people who have been doing AIP and are finding that they could use some extra support. So that's a really good one. And then the other thing I was going to mention anyway in today's call, and it's always a great time to do it, so I put that on the next slide, is that my colleagues and I, back in January, so this was originally held January 6th through the 12th, we put together the first ever All AIP Summit, the 2020 AIP Summit. And it was great. It was really exciting. I think that a lot of people tuned in to watch it. A lot of people signed up more interested, maybe didn't have a lot of time to watch it. And we've recognized now that with the recent developments, with people being quarantined or being scared about kind of what's happening, self-isolating, whatever degree of which you're affected by the coronavirus epidemic, we're all affected by it to some degree. And so we thought it would be a really nice service to the community to open up that and rebroadcast the session, all of the sessions again. So this is just, kind of a tangent to that question about, support groups. This isn't a support group per se, but it is 7 days of speakers where we're all coaches talking about different elements of being supportive of each other and of our clients, and providing resources and ideas on AIP. And it's not just for people new to it. I realized after this happened, after January, it broadcast, I talked with a couple of my clients and they said, oh, I didn't bother tuning in because I already know everything about AIP. And I thought they were complimenting me like, I know everything because you taught it to me, Jamie. But I realized I maybe hadn't explained this very well, and that it's not just for people who are new to AIP. We're not trying to sell it and convince people to do it. We're actually developed these sessions specifically in mind that our audience would be people who are probably doing AIP on their own and are looking to make this, just something they understand more, or looking to troubleshoot, or whatever the case might be. So you would find all kinds of different tidbits in there if that's something that you're interested in. Totally free. We just decided we still had, all the recordings, all the kind of infrastructure in place, just turned that all back on for the rest of March. And so when you have time, if you've got some extra time and need a distraction from worries about other things, you can go and watch a session here and there. And that'll, again, will be available through the end of March. So AIPsummit.com will take you there. You can go and check that out. All right. We're flying through these questions. I believe there's just one more question. Yes, and I had alluded to this at the beginning, that I would talk a little bit more about COVID-19, the coronavirus, and should we be taking supplements? So this is a big question. This came in from Oleana. I think that's how to say it, Oleana. I love that name. I'm going to say it's Oleana because it sounds pretty to me. So I'm not an expert in this area. I'll just say that right away. And I'm certainly not your doctor. That's very important to know. I'm not giving you any medical advice here. The only thing I can say is that we need to take this seriously. I know we're maybe getting sick of hearing about it, and so I don't want to go into the details of it. And if you want to learn how it works and get scared or get reassured, I'm not probably the person to talk to about that, except I can tell you what I'm doing. One, I am following the guidance of the authorities here in the United States, which is that we are self-isolating, social distancing, right? To the degree that it's not the same as being quarantined or even self-isolating. We're still, when necessary, going out to do things. We had to take our dog to the vet this morning, and they had a really great process in place where they had us wait in our cars and they came out to get her, so they can minimize their contact with us. So, we're not totally in quarantine, but we're paying attention to that. No gatherings of more than 10 people. We're not going out to work out at the gym, that got closed anyway. And then as far as, what I'm doing to support my health is really just trying to refocus on the things that I know are supportive of health. You asked about supplements, and everybody's asking about that, and there's all kinds of conflicting information out there. Things that, people throw out: zinc, take zinc, that's really important. Don't take something, do take this. You'll hear people with a lot of really well-reasoned arguments, but the fact is we really don't know a lot. I mean, they called it a novel coronavirus, meaning that it hasn't been seen by our species before. I mean, even though China's been dealing with it for a few months, it's only been a few months. That 19 in the name is because it's first came about in 2019, the end of 2019. So just a little bit more than 3 months this has existed. So clearly, anybody talking about like researchers know something, I am afraid that that's not very accurate. I mean, they may have some basics knowledge based on how it's similar to other viruses. So I take with a serious grain of salt anybody telling me about certain supplements that are going to be helpful or not. I think there are some good principles that we can all kind of embrace that apply to all illnesses that our immune system has to interact with, viruses of any kind. And one is that your immune system is better able to respond to these things if you are taking care of your body as a whole. So sleep, that is the number one thing. I would tell anybody who's losing sleep over worrying about this that they need to figure out how to stop doing that right now. That's more important than figuring out if you should take a supplement. You need to get sleep. And it's especially hard, almost, I think, even harder when our schedules are mixed up. Say your kids are all home and you're not working, or you're working from home. It doesn't feel as needed to like go to bed at a bedtime, but I really think it's actually extra important that we do that. So don't worry about supplements as much as you worry about taking care of those basic needs every night, prioritizing sleep. Set the bedtime that you need, set the wake up time. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like losing, like I do, I wake up in the middle of the night and start thinking about stuff. Have a plan. What are you going to do? And that plan cannot be, I'm going to grab my phone and see what the latest updates are. Lock the phone up in another room. People often give me these excuses about how they can't have their phone near them because their kids are out somewhere. They might need to call them. Well, hey, your kids aren't supposed to be out. So no excuses. Put the phone someplace else. Get good sleep. Second, stress. We're all feeling stress. Absolutely, we are. Even if you are not personally worried about getting this, which is kind of the attitude I've taken, it's like I'm not actually worried about getting sick, although I'm taking precautions. But there's still stress involved in just this whole situation, and worrying about people you care about, and worrying about the state of our economy, and worrying about just the state of the world, and worrying about, quite honestly, you may be a very empathetic person who's worrying about people you don't even know, just worrying about people being sick and the reality of what this means. So find a way to manage that stress. And I know that's easier said than done, but we have to know ourselves, and we have to know what will help us, more so than kind of listening to what I say. What manages your stress may be the opposite for me. So I think sleep, stress, and then good food. We all need to eat the best possible diet we can. That doesn't mean that you have to go back to that first question that Andrea asked about organic food, that you have to get really freaked out about if my food isn't perfect. Because let's face it, we may not be able to get everything we need, especially if our movements are further restricted and we can't get to the grocery store. And even if you get to the grocery store, they're out of what you wanted. So you do the very best you can. And as long as what you're eating is a whole foods based diet, so you're not just, kind of indulging in the stress fueled desire to eat junk food. If you're eating vegetables, you're eating healthy meat, fish, organ meats, bone broth, all of those things that we always try to emphasize, eating some fermented foods, everything that supports your gut health. That is above anything else in terms of supplements. There are a couple things that I have heard that I think you can kind of file away in your mind, though. One is that if you start to feel sick, it is really been, I think, pretty convincing anyway so far that perhaps taking ibuprofen or any non-steroidal anti-inflammatory NSAID, it could be very problematic. It seems like there's some mechanism there. So if you start to feel sick and your inclination had been, or somebody you know's inclination had been to pop an Advil, this would not be the time to do that. The best is to, if you really need something, take some Tylenol. That's going to be, I think, the safer choice. But keep that in mind. So don't do that. Supplements that you might have considered, you're continuing to take, if you have something that your doctor recommends for just maintenance, I don't see any reason to change any of that. There's been some talk in some of the circles I've been on saying that we think maybe like vitamin D supplements and vitamin A supplements perhaps might not be helpful, but if they're already something you need, then you should continue taking them or talk to your doctor about that. And then the only other one that like I've seen that I think like makes a lot of sense and I've used for other activity, other viruses in the past has been doing zinc lozenges. So I think that's something to have on hand in case you do start to feel like you're getting it. That may be helpful and shouldn't be harmful. So you're not taking zinc prophylactically, you're not taking it to prevent something, but if you do start to develop symptoms, it can be something to take right away. So get some, have them on hand, and then you've got that in your arsenal. So I hope that helps. Those are the only questions that were submitted. Again, I'm going to go back a slide to remind you of the AIP Summit sessions. Again, you can go to aipsummit.com. There's absolutely no charge for this. These are completely free. We do have a package that we set up if you wanted to get transcripts and stuff like that. But I think for right now, most people are just like, maybe something to think about that's still about your health, but isn't on the topic of the day. So if you've got some extra time and you want to watch those, we hope that you will take advantage of this offer and go ahead and watch those. So that is there for you. And then just a reminder that I'll be doing these again next Thursday for more question and answers. You've got the link and the notes on YouTube here for where to submit them if you want to. Reminder that I'm available. If you want to talk to me for 15 minutes, sign up for one of my discovery consultations. I'm happy to just chat, with anybody, whether you're really kind of investigating, working with me in a paid capacity or not. I'm happy to chat with you about kind of what I do or answer any quick questions for you if my conversation here wasn't enough. So be well, everybody. I'm trying to send out all the positive vibes I can for, everybody to stay safe, listen to the guidance that's coming from your local authorities about what to do, take care of you and your family, and make the most of this time. We're kind of forced into maybe hanging out more with the people that we often don't get to spend a lot of time with, and then we're being separated from other people that we do spend a lot of time with normally. And it's just an interesting perspective to sort of look at and take advantage of the change in what's happening around us and see what we can learn from it. And I'm often reminded that a lot of the most challenging things that happen to us in retrospect, down the road at some point we look back and we say, that was challenging, it was difficult, but it was also a tremendous gift. I learned such a tremendous lesson, or I received such a tremendous blessing out of that challenge. And I'm certain that we will see that from this as well. So in the meantime, just be well.